All right, starting this off a little bit later than expected, but it was a little bit of time differences. But welcome, big ol' words. I almost got that mixed up a bit, but thank you for dropping by for the show. I think this was like maybe the first time that we've gotten to talk before. But how are things on
Yeah,
your end?
good. And I don't know why, but a lot of people call me Big Ol' Worlds.
Oh,
It happens all the
seriously?
time. Yeah. I think maybe it just seems like a more natural sentence, even though I mean, who says Big Ol' Words at any moment in time? But yeah, several people will call me that or say like I didn't realize this whole time it was Big Ol' Words. So I'm good, man. Everything's good. It's been kind of a crazy day, but excited. This is really awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, that's not a problem. And we've had like tons of different people that we brought on the show before. And I don't think anyone's really mentioned about your channel, but I remember a while back that you were like just about to hit 1,000. And I remember like checking back a few days ago and you're already past like 13,000 subscribers. And it's like your videos are garnering thousands of views at the same time, and it's impressive to see like in the short amount of time that you've been on YouTube that you've actually grown an audience like that. Does it seem like that's a bit crazy to realize that you've gotten that bit of I guess popularity stream, if you will?
Yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy. It only makes me wish I had done this earlier because I've been working on stuff like this forever and just never thought to like really do it on YouTube. And so yeah, but as far as like the channel's growth, it's not like I thought if I just did these things that then people would watch them. I'm as surprised as anyone, but thankful. Everyone I've been talking to has been super cool and supportive and seemingly really likes it. And yeah, I seem to get pretty consistent views regardless of what I'm talking about. Some of them get more response, but
Hmm.
even the more obscure ones, and I'm mostly talking about obscure things, but like really obscure that no one wants to talk about. Even those seem to get pretty consistent views, so that makes me happy because that's what I like talking about is some weird off the cuff shit that maybe isn't like for everybody. So yeah, yeah,
Uh,
it's been really positive.
Now, when you mean obscure, like what are some prime example of videos would you say, or some of them that have been very surprising that have caught on like wildfire that you didn't expect to get that popular?
So by obscure, I'm already talking about kind of deep cuts.
Mhm.
I only really talk about the NES. I had never thought I would, but that's just what I keep sticking with. So I'm already kind of on sort of the deep end of that. But then lately, I've been talking a lot about the PAL exclusives, the games that were only released in Europe, which do work on a North American top loader NES, which is the only reason I really kind of started collecting them.
Hmm.
But those, even Europeans don't really know what I'm talking about. Like some of them, but a lot of them, they're like, I have no fucking clue what this is. So you have to think that it's like the NES wasn't very popular in Europe, and then these games were already rare if you were European, and then if you were in North America or in Asia, there's a good chance you've never heard of them. So they don't, I think people like the channel enough that they'll watch it, but like I don't think most people are clamoring for a review of Banana Prince or something. They don't really know that. I barely knew anything about it, so
Right.
um, yeah, that's what I would describe as obscure. As far as like caught on, I mean, sometimes reviews catch on. I have no idea. I reviewed Swordmaster, which isn't like a particularly good or even that obscure of a game that a
Hmm.
lot of people were liked for some reason, but like that to me doesn't feel like it's anything too different from what someone else has done. And then the video has the most views is about Game Boy games on the NES. So NES games that came out late in the life of the system that look like shit. And I just started to notice it more and more as I was kind of reviewing these kind of rarer games that they just looked awful. And it turned out as I kind of looked at their Game Boy counterparts that they were clearly designed for the Game Boy first and then ported to the NES, which is the superior system. And that's why they look so terrible. And so I think that
Hmm.
kind of resonated just because I don't know if anyone had ever talked about that. Um, it's definitely a deep cut about deep cuts, and that was cool that there was a lot of response to it because I don't. A lot of people just said like I thought it looked like that too, but never really connected it. So yeah, that was cool.
There's like rarely channels that are out there nowadays that don't do like just only one console. They usually go for like other systems as well. Does it seem like at times that you tend to try to lean over to that? Because I know you mentioned that they did like a video based on like Game Boy games based on NES titles. But like, let's
Right.
say for example, like if it gets to GBA, like for some of the titles that they did for, I think it was like some of the Famicom releases, and then there was like
Right.
some re-releases of NES ones. Would that be something that you would lean towards for a future video?
Yeah, sure. The only reason I'm talking exclusively about the NES is that I don't know why. I don't know why I keep sticking with it, but
Hmm.
the main reason is just that that's what I collect for. I mean, I have, if you look behind me, I have a bunch of stuff, but like the NES is the system I grew up with. It's the system I kind of obsessively collected for. And so this channel is kind of a like response to that, where I was like, well, I have all this shit, like I should at least be finding a way to like constructively use it other than just playing it. I mean, playing it is constructive, but like sharing it in a constructive way. So I started kind of writing reviews and doing that stuff. And now that I've done the YouTube channel, I always plan to talk about other systems or even other topics. I never really even thought this was going to be a video game channel. Just thought I would just do whatever I felt like. And more, I realized that like this is kind of what I really know and can talk about. And
Hmm.
part of that is that I just don't have as extensive of a knowledge of like the Sega Genesis, for instance. I have hundreds of those cartridges, but like I can't talk about it in such strong detail as I can with the NES because I just don't know enough about like where games fit into the timeline
Hmm.
of its lifespan, or like a lot of like contextual knowledge about the companies that made them, or like how they relate to other titles. Because it just wasn't. I didn't even have a Genesis. It was like something I experienced much later. Whereas with the NES, I have a lot of the like nostalgic context to be able to say what my friends had, or like what other people have told me that they were looking for or liked playing.
Hmm.
And then having done so much research in collecting, I have a pretty good understanding of what games people didn't play and didn't collect because I know how expensive they are, or I just have read so many lists that I don't see anyone talking about them. So it's been hard to translate that same knowledge to other aspects of anything, whether it be like television or music or film or anything that I'm really interested in, because I haven't gotten as obsessively encyclopedic about it as I have with the NES. For better or for worse, who knows?
Hmm.
That might just be me. I might just be the NES guy, and maybe I'll do a different channel later. But for now, I think it's just this is what I'm going to be doing until I find something else I'm really, really fascinated by.
Or until you decide to like do something else with your free time. But there's
Right.
rarely like, yeah, like I said before, that there's like anyone sticking to one system. There's like another one that goes by the name of GameCube Galaxy, and they do mainly GameCube stuff. But that's the other thing is like very early on when AVGN was doing his stuff, that he was
Mhm.
strictly the NES Nintendo nerd. And then I
Right.
guess they ended up like branching out. I forget like when it was, maybe around Sega CD was when they did something else. But
Mhm.
as far as like when you reach the very plateau of like the NES library, and I know that there's not a lot of really high recommendations that people have not like tampered with or like touched on yet, that most people would think of, oh yeah, that would be a day one buy that I would want to get. So as far as like getting to that point of the very tiptoe last thing NES, like do you think that you would actually continue this for like maybe another 5 years talking about NES, or do you think that at that point in time you would actually switch things up after there?
I think when I first started this, I didn't think I could talk about the NES for more than like 10 videos.
Oh wow.
And now I've made like 100. I keep thinking of weirder stuff to talk about, like weirder, more over analytical things to like break it down.
Mhm.
So I think realistically, I could talk about it forever, even though there are obviously a finite amount of games. Even if I got really deep and was only talking about homebrews or like Famicom exclusives or like bootlegs, like there's if I like did all of that, I could still talk about it for years and years past that. I think there's even though there is obviously like a number in my head of how many games exist, there are still topics beyond that, different ways to discuss it and different ways to like to introduce ideas that connect various themes about the games themselves.
Hmm.
I think your point about AVGN, which I think is interesting, um, is that yeah, the reason that I think he was talking about the NES is like that dude is probably my age, and
Hmm.
so that was like he was doing the same thing I'm doing now, but like for the thing that he was nostalgic about. The thing is that I'm like 15 years too late to that party. Not too late, but like this is like I decided to do it now
Hmm.
at 40 to be like, you know what, fuck it. This is like something I'm passionate about. I'm going to do it. Whereas, and so in that sense, I feel like a lot of the people who are then going to be talking about games probably aren't going to be talking about the NES because they too have experienced AVGN and people like that, Pat the NES Punk and stuff like that for almost 20 years now.
Hmm.
And like me, we're like, well, what else is there to say? Why even bother doing it? Whereas like then younger people are the ones who are going to be their first system may have been a GameCube or a PSP or something, and so
Oh
can
yeah.
do sort of their own version of what he was doing or what other people have done to give their own nostalgic base for that kind of stuff. Scott the Woz, he's someone I've watched where it's like he's clearly probably 15 years younger than I am. And so
Hmm.
his base is probably like N64 or later. And so I could see how those are topics that like he thinks are interesting to talk about. I don't know, Wii U golf, a system I barely even looked at once, you know?
Hmm.
And so I have no nostalgic context for. So like I could see how it can keep going on forever, but how the NES can feel pretty redundant at this point because it has been discussed to death. And there aren't as many people like me who are like at this point going to go full in on it because, yeah, what else is there to talk about?
Yeah, because it's very rare to see a bunch of like different channels that do just one specific console. But
Yeah.
like I was asking earlier, as far as like in 5 years' time, I know that you mentioned that you're gonna try to tackle as much NES as possible. But if it ever gets to the point where you want to do a different system, if you could say like in
Mhm.
5 years you could see yourself leveling up to maybe Super Nintendo or something else like Neo Geo, if you will, would that be something that you could see yourself doing in the future?
No, not at all. And
Hmm.
it's because Um, there are people that I've seen who I think do a better job of what I'm doing for other systems. Like SNES Drunk does a better job than I would do talking about the Super Nintendo. He's
Hmm.
as deep into that as I am into the NES, I think. Um, but it's because I don't really have the collection. I really, that's such a big part of where my knowledge base comes is from collecting the games that I don't feel like I could talk about the Neo Geo, which I don't even have the console for, in any kind of respectable way. I think if I really felt like I was at the end of any kind of content based on the NES, that I would be talking about something entirely different. One of my favorite YouTubers is Pushing Up Roses, and
Hmm.
she talks about mostly adventure games, or did. So like the King's Quest and those kind of things, the point and click stuff. And talked about a bunch of deep cut stuff that I had never heard of and somehow made that interesting, which is a very hard genre to make interesting. And then at some point, she just started talking about Are You Afraid of the Dark? Murder She Wrote, some weird Hallmark movie not too long
Oh
ago.
yeah.
And just kind of at some point, it wasn't even like she started a new channel or she was like, I'm going to be doing this now. She just started kind of integrating it. And it might be a hard thing for me because I've really pushed so hard into doing the NES, but like that's kind of what I would see is if at a certain point I really felt like all I was doing was spinning my wheels, I would either stop or just start transitioning into other topics beyond video games, probably.
Oh, okay. So, like, for example, like, what would some of those things be that you would like cover over? Would it just be some forms of like pop culture media, or is it just like something close to video games but not quite?
Yeah, probably just pop culture media in general. I overanalyze everything that I can think of. I like if I'm by myself, I'm probably thinking about something I've seen or read or listened to, and then breaking it down as much as I can over and over again. I just can't help it. It's like just my nature. So I'm not saying that I'm any great. That's always the toughest thing, right? It's like if you're going to talk about a topic, do you believe that you're an authority on that topic? Like I'm not a game designer, but I do feel like I am a pretty big, no, I am an authority on the NES just because that's all I've really thought about for a long time. Am I that much of an authority on film? Absolutely not.
Hmm.
I do have a lot of thoughts on film. Would I really want to talk about it? Maybe. But in like, I think it wouldn't be like, now I'm a film channel and I'm going to like talk about my favorite Kubricks or something. It's like, I'm not a film student and I'm not a film analyst. It would probably be more like maybe one video would be about something that I was interested in, like an episode of a specific television show that that really resonated with me, and then move on to something else the next week. Maybe just more like general than like now I'm this kind of channel or this kind of channel. But I don't know.
Okay.
Cross
Well,
that bridge when I get there.
cross that bridge when we come to it. So,
Mhm.
no telling what the next few years of your channel will look like, but at the rate that it's going right now, I'm gonna definitely say that it will continue for a while. So,
Yeah, I
I-
mean, a lot of it just depends on life. You know, I'm 40 years old, so there's other stuff that gets in the way. Like I have a child, and then I'm expecting another, and like just work and all the things that like keep you from kind of just exploring hobbies as much as you'd like to. And that's what this is. Until it becomes something else, it's just a hobby. So I try and dedicate as much time as I can to it, but sometimes it's at the detriment of other things in my life. So at some point, those then have to take priority. So that's the only thing that potentially holds it back.
that's incredible because there's been people that we've had on the show before that a lot of them are dads themselves, and they're also
Mhm.
raising kids. So, since we've asked them about it, like, since you're raising a family and also trying to provide content for YouTube, how tough is it for you to be able to juggle between both of them at the same time? Or is it a little bit easier when compared to when you first started getting kids?
You know, when my daughter was born is when I started this channel, which was a weird time to do it, but it was like COVID time, and I was at home with her a lot, and so I was like, you know, when kids are really little, they don't do anything, like anything. They just like sleep and eat, and that's it. So it's like I needed something to do in my time, so that's when I started making these videos. It's like she would be asleep, and then I'd just be like over here editing on my computer. Um, and then over time, it's been more like everybody goes to sleep and then I come out here. So I'm in an exterior room or studio. My house is up here somewhere. And so I kind of work in these 3 or 4 hour increments at night. And that's been not the easiest thing. It means that my daughter's going to be asleep, so that's easy, but I do end up spending less time with my wife because she's tired right now. She's pregnant, but like she's tired, and then I know there's so much time I really need to devote. So it's the biggest obstacle and will be the biggest obstacle in the future, which is just like, how do you dedicate time to this without it taking time away from your family?
Hmm.
And I don't know the answer to that yet. I think I probably have another year of my wife being tired or pregnant before we're kind of back to a more normal situation where it's like, all right, where are we at? And I would
Hmm.
love it if by then I could be working more during the day. If I could be doing more of this on like a dedicated part-time schedule where it's like, you know, maybe 2 days a week I'm like actively just working on YouTube and not having to like stay up all night doing it, then that would
Hmm.
be the ideal. Then I could really dedicate then more time to my family. But
So,
that requires a lot of things.
so I guess the only other thing I was gonna ask is like, when you had the idea to just start doing, to start doing the channel, uh, what was your wife's first impression of like you wanting to do this as like a side thing? Does she really think much of it, or was she like at first like had her foot down, like, okay, maybe this may be a bit much?
um, you know, it's funny, the very first time I showed her these games, she didn't just laugh, she fucking died laughing. Like walked into the room and just died laughing. Um, and I don't know if she just really didn't expect it. She says she thought I had a CD collection. She thought that was really funny, which fair enough.
Hmm.
But she is not really like a gamer, but she is a very big YouTuber, and at least someone who enjoys YouTube. And she couldn't be prouder. She thinks it's like the coolest thing. The coolest thing. She has a lot of thoughts on how I think she wish I would be doing it, but
Hmm.
she's my number one fan. She's super supportive. And I've talked to some other dudes who do YouTube stuff, and they've told me that they have run into conflict where their partners don't really get it,
Hmm.
don't really, support them in that same way. And I've been very lucky that I have not felt that at all. I mean, if anything, she's encouraging me more and putting more pressure on me than sometimes I put on myself to not to like just to do better. That's all.
Oh yeah, to be
Um,
better for yourself as well.
yeah, she's amazing, and that's like I said. My only regret is just that she's so supportive of this, and then it sometimes means that I spend less time with her than I do working on this because they're both my obsession. I love my wife to death, but it's like because if she wasn't supportive, yeah, I would not be. You wouldn't see a video a week from me. You'd maybe see one a month. Like it just, I wouldn't be able to like come out here every night and be working so hard on this stuff. So, yeah, she rules.
Yeah, it would be the AVGM route because I think that they're working on just. I think it's like up to 2 episodes a month, or just like 1 episode a month now. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's like just like you said before, it's just a matter of like time management and yeah, a healthy relationship that supports your hobby, and I'm pretty sure you support like whatever it is she actually does for a hobby as well. And I think that
Yeah.
that's what a lot of people that hopefully do watch these interviews, that they take away something that they can at least inspire to just keep a hold of, and just whether it's just like video editing, that they could just you know take it for what it is a healthy hobby, instead of just going to like a club and like getting drugged up and all that.
Yeah, sure. And I will say, like, as someone who, I mean, I had owned a club before I did this,
Oh
and I
really?
drank all the time. So, like, I will say, aside from having kids, one of the very positive influences of this is like, I kind of choose not to go out at all
Hmm.
because it interferes with this. It like the time I want to dedicate to like the few hours I have to edit, I could be going out to the bar after I play soccer a couple nights a week, and the guys usually go out afterward. And a couple years ago, I would be there every single week, but now it's like, well, I don't know. It's like already 10 o'clock. I've got like maybe 2 hours before I have to go to sleep. I'm just gonna go home and edit. So it has really changed for in a positive way, like the way that I was not wasting time, but just spending a lot of my time, which is
Hmm.
just out and socializing.
And it keeps you
But
productive at the same time, so it's like you're constantly just staying on focus with just trying to produce stuff that a lot of people are watching nowadays. But
yeah, sure.
as I guess the only other thing that I was gonna ask is the main thing about your game room, and I'm looking around it right now, the camera right here. There's
Hmm.
some interesting things like right next to you, and I know
Hmm.
that you mentioned about productivity and just like staying like productive and just not really going to bars and stuff. But I see markers that are next to you. Like, do you
Yeah.
happen to do art at all, or is that just something that is like highlighters?
Before, so I've done a bunch of random stuff, and so for years, my friend and I owned an art gallery, and so a lot of this art, this is all stuff from the gallery,
Hmm.
um, and stuff in the house. So like I've been involved with art, especially in the city I'm in Atlanta for a long time. And then I dabble. I was really more of like a like kind of graffiti guy than I was like really an artist. So like that's kind of what my like if I'm bored that's kind of what I'm doodling. And then I kind of started incorporating some of that into I have like a Patreon that I started just to see if I could really kind of had some of the just the revenue and also to kind of create some different content.
Hmm.
And part of what I was offering there was like I would draw people's names and kind of put them in the credits. So like this is the most recent one I did. This is like I don't know how well you can see this. So this is
Aiden
like
anime.
Aiden Loves Anime, which is like
That's
one
cool.
of my Patreons, and they have their own channel, which is also really great. But yeah, so it's like
Hmm.
stuff like that where it's like this is one of my homies from college that's also on the Patreon. So it's like um
Oh
that's been
wow.
really fun because if you ever do editing and stuff, it takes a while, like the rendering or like you're just waiting for stuff to be uploaded. So I love it when people join that part of the Patreon because I get to spend that time when I'm editing, also kind of drawing out stuff. So yeah, I wouldn't describe myself as an artist per se. My wife is an artist. She went to school for art. She's a textile designer.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and so I would lean more on her. She would describe me as an artist, but I do not. I don't claim that at all. I'm just someone who likes to dabble in just about everything. So that happens to be one of the things I'm into for sure.
It's an extra skill because there's not a lot of people that are in the community that I know of that are artists. I've actually dabbled in drawings myself. I don't actually have my
Cool.
artwork on me. But yeah, it's a fun hobby. Now, when you started doing art like that, like how far back would you say that you first started like just doing artwork? Would you maybe say about more than 15 years, or would it be like less than that?
I mean, so yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've always been into doing stuff. It was mostly like maybe like high school and college started getting into like making films or um we would like make zines where it was like creative writing and like some kind of weird drawing or Photoshop and stuff.
Hmm.
And then, in my like early 20s, then I started getting into graffiti a lot, and that became something I was really passionate about for a long time. So like that's kind of my only real practiced art, unfortunately, which is like a very strange medium to like really spend a lot of time in. But like, um, it's kind of then what I do when I just like feel like drawing is I'll just draw out somebody's name. Like this is my name, uh, over and over and over again. This is
Oh,
just
wow.
me like waiting for something to happen. I don't know
Hmm.
what I was doing, but I was just like I don't know, waiting for something to waiting for something. I
Hmm.
think it was like I had an appointment. I had an hour to kill, so I was like watching Succession and doodling. Like that's just for kicks, though. It's and so it's been fun to kind of slightly incorporate it into the channel, but it's not really the focus. I did ask my homie who did Ashley, who does video game style art at points, and he did the like intro. If you've seen my channel, he did like
Hmm.
the drawing of BigOleWords. And so I would usually lean on people like that to like help me with design. In the future, I'll have them help with more shirts and stickers and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay, now I know that you showed off the artwork that you've drawn already, but so what is it to you about graffiti art that made you want to try to perfect it or just like do it in that style? Is it just mostly
Sure.
from something like Mark Echo perchance, or was it something else that made it
Yeah,
happen?
yeah. No, I just yeah, just got into it. It's if you start writing graffiti, it gets very addictive.
Hmm.
And it's much like making videos these days. It's just something you do repeatedly, and then you start to see your stuff around, and it gets people start to notice it gets very addictive. And so, if you talk to anyone who has done that, even if they stop doing it, they'll still, if they're like sitting still, they'll be drawing their name just over and over and over again. All my friends who are like relatively retired, if they're like have a moment, they will be just drawing their graffiti name. So it's like I don't know what really attracted me to it. I think I was just kind of engaged in stuff and art and like the people that I thought were really interesting were doing it. So I just kind of followed suit. I don't know,
Oh, I
but
gotcha.
at this point, I would say I very rarely go and paint any kind of illegal graffiti or something. I'm mostly just sitting in my studio. I'm not painting trains or anything like that. So
Yeah, and there's like some art exhibits mess up that. But yeah, they have some art exhibits that is like I'm trying to remember the exact graffiti artist where they go into like some secret like building room type stuff and then they have like a bunch of his artwork out. But
oh,
I don't think remember doing anything illegal graffitiing, but yeah, that's like when you
hmm,
hear the word graffiti art or the words graffiti art like you said, where it's just spray painting it onto like trains or just like sides of buildings. But
sure.
as far as like your definition of what graffiti art means to you, what would that
Uh,
definition be exactly?
I never thought I would be talking about this. This is so funny, but it's awesome. This is like something I love. Graffiti to me is illegal graffiti. So like painting something out in the world that you're probably not supposed to be,
Hmm.
and like then the style of letters that we refer to as graffiti is just something that's been born out of that tradition. So like the people who have since the 70s, especially in America, but this is all over the world now. But you know, there's obviously like historical graffiti, people writing their name on the pyramid or something. But like modern graffiti, it's like places like New York and Philly where people are just writing their names, and then that kind of became more and more stylized to become what we think of as like a graffiti style of letter. And so you can do it without ever having painted graffiti, like illegal graffiti, but like you know, that's just like that's just mimicking the style. I'm not saying I'm like some or ever was any kind of relevant graffiti writer, but like to me, if I see something that someone did, but I know they're not a graffiti writer, they're not doing graffiti. It's just like I don't know, it's like a coloring book or something. It's not
Oh yeah.
it lacks any authenticity. It has to be born out of like a really stupid and addictive and illegal thing that you're doing. Not that I've done anything illegal, just for yeah, just
for enjoyment,
for my own safety. Not that I've done anything illegal. But
yeah, that's
so far,
that's the good way to like just pretty much convince a lot of people that it's definitely considerable as a hobby, because I know it's been thrown around a lot of times, like especially through like the news media outlets that paint it as like this negative thing. But yeah, as you described that, it's just a passion project and not really meant to do any like heinous acts of villainy, just like facing like people's windows and stuff like that.
I mean, there definitely is plenty of that too. It's a very strange thing. And people love like a really nice mural and they're like, wow, it's really great. I love this. And it's like, you know, sometimes it is great, but like personally, if I see something like that someone just did on the highway, even if it didn't really look that good, I'm more impressed by that just because the act of creation, the danger and the you know, the risks that they're taking is in itself part of the art. Like if you have all the time in the world, you can do something great. But if you only have a few seconds, how good can you make it? How willing are you to get arrested for it? I saw a kid in the middle of the fucking day the other day on the highway, climbing under a fence where it wasn't even slow traffic, and started like hitting up this spot. And I was like, that didn't usually happen back when I was really painting. But like, props to you, man. That's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. You don't have to do that, but like, you know, like I have to give that guy more respect because like he put it all on the line for what he really thought was interesting. Most people would look at it and be like, this sucks, it's awful, but like I know that what it took to do it, and so I elevate it to a higher level because it has more to its substance. And I'm sure you can really say that about just about anything. Like you know, a really good song is one thing, but if you really have a better understanding of how that song was constructed, then it lends more to like what you think of it, other than just like it's catchy. Like, okay, it's catchy, but like, you know, what process was involved, like what influences were necessary to make that happen, can make it more interesting. Sometimes, I don't know.
Okay,
not to wax too poetic.
That's okay. But yeah, it's incredible to see like some people express their passion for their art, and yeah, it's pretty crazy to see some people go to that length just to try to put together like a piece of art like that. And yeah, most of the other time it's just on ground level, but I've always wondered like how people do that on like bridges and just like try to like shimmy across or something like that, especially if something like a train is going by. And I would assume that that's a bit nerve-wracking to have to experience like the rattling and all that, and just like spraying, and you're just holding on for dear life and making sure you don't like fall like the cold frigid waters, so it's like during wintertime or whatever.
Yeah, sure. I mean, some of that stuff people do die doing it. It's not like it's I mean, I've known people who died doing it. It's not like it's it's crazy. Some of it is really insane. People do climb on these giant, you know, like bridges over on an overpass or something. It's like, yeah, you slip and you're dead. There's no confusion about that. So it's like, yeah, that's part of, again, the appreciation of the art is like how far someone is willing to go, even if what they're presenting maybe isn't visually that interesting, says about as much as it does the style they're putting into it. And like, if you do something really nice and it's on the ground and it's hidden from view, so like, you know, there's no chance you're going to get in trouble, it could be cool, but like you have to weigh the two against each other. Like
Okay.
they each have their own merit, and it's a strange thing, but it's true.
I guess since to try to close off this particular, I'm messing up words tonight. I don't even know what's going on. It's late. I do apologize. But as far as to finish off this particular topic, if you had a particular canvas, doesn't matter what the size, what the area, the state, country, outer space, if you wanted to.
Uh-huh.
As far as like a type of canvas that you say is like perfect to be able to design the perfect art piece that you want to make, or just anything that you want to actually draw up, like what would that type of scenario be for you?
That's a that's a good question. I have no idea. Um, I really don't. I think I would waver somewhere between something really, really visible and something really secretive,
Hmm.
where it's like it's either like the biggest thing that you could possibly not ignore, but like, and this probably says a lot about my channel and like how I approach it. It's like you can like really put yourself out there, but like it has to be the best thing possible, right? So like if you try and clickbait people and they watch your video and it's just okay, they may watch it again, but probably
Hmm.
not. But like if you don't do that and you kind of take a more unassuming path, it's a little more passive. You're hoping that people will just find it and that they will appreciate it for what it is,
Mm-hmm.
without it being in their face. And so I really don't know. I mean, there's those are the two approaches, right? Like, would I just hide it under the sea so you have to go diving to find it? Would that be so extreme that then it wouldn't be that interesting unless it was like really fascinating? I don't
Oh,
know.
yeah.
That's a great question. I have no clue.
Or I guess a good way to just like switch it up to it, because it is in your intro. Just have like some friend of yours come out and be saying, "Oh, like check this shit out."
That is from Mr. Show with Bob and David, which is a sketch comedy show from the 90s that was on HBO with Bob Odenkirk and David Cross. And
Oh, okay.
the sketch itself isn't even really that funny. It's just like a parody of Jesus Christ Superstar called Jeepers Creepers Semi-Star,
Hmm.
about like a slacker messiah played by Jack Black. It's not very funny, but that particular line is really funny, and he does like this really goofy dance after it. And so for some reason, when I was like starting this channel and I was trying to think of what to put at the beginning, that was the only thing I could think of.
Oh, really?
Was check this shit out. And I will say it gets a divided response. I
Hmm.
often have people comment that they like the channel but hate the intro. And
Really?
then I've had people say that if it's a Mr. Show fan, they love it. I've had people say that they like it. Sometimes it's a little aggressive. It is. I
Hmm.
can't take that. I can't like dispel that. Like it, especially considering my demeanor. I don't think of myself as particularly aggressive. So like to start out with something that's literally yelling, "Check this shit out," it's a little intense. So I could see how it puts people off. But at this point, it's too late for me to go back on that. I mean, it's not too late, but
Hmm.
like I probably won't.
Oh, it's
I
understandable.
don't have any
Now,
better ideas.
since we're still talking about it, like as far as like just when they start to hear that at the very beginning, is it kind of like a response to like how YouTube has like changed over the years, that they basically would think that immediately, or do you think that it might be something else that is like a kind of like a cautionary reaction type of response to that?
I mean, I wish I had put any sort of thought into it. I really did not, but I would say that the way that YouTube has changed absolutely positions people to be more offended by language, which is
Hmm.
unfortunate. Um, but you know, a lot of the earlier YouTube was like just completely unfiltered, and so I think when I started this channel, I was using so much, not like worse language, because I don't think there is any kind of bad language, but like I definitely was falling more on just using expletives whenever I felt like. And so because of the way that YouTube is kind of forcing people to change that in order to get more visibility, I too have done it. Part of that is that, and part of it's like my wife kind of brought up that my daughter will eventually watch this. So like if I'm talking
Mm,
about like
yeah.
hardcore gangbangs or something, like it's not something I really want to have to explain to her. She's already watching it. She's only two and a
Hmm.
half. So like I don't really want to have to explain to her in a couple of years what I was talking about. But yeah, I think that probably is part of it, is that like people are now expecting a tamer um, discussion when it comes to this stuff. Even some of the people I've mentioned, like Scott the Woz or something, if he uses a bad word, he bleeps it out. And a lot of people do that now. I would never fucking do that. But like, but I get it. I get it because, you know, they're living the dream, which is like they're living off of their creation. And if I thought that that was the one thing I had to compromise to reach that, I wouldn't really think twice about it. It's not, saying one word is not really worth like you know, getting rid of what you've created. So I don't know.
Because there's a lot of people that, especially for channels like Alpha Omega Sin, and I think that they still do YouTube like every now and then, but it's been a while since they've worked on a video. But it's, yeah, like you said, that there's a bunch of channels that try their best to be ad-friendly as much as possible to be able to get that exposure. And I can get why they do it, because the hustle is real whenever it comes to producing like any type of content, like especially interviews like these that we put out for people to watch. It's tough to be able to get visibility on YouTube, because like back then it was like the Wild West period, as you stated, and now it's like, it's honestly, I would probably compare it to being more like cable television now, because there's like censors and stuff, and there's like advertisers that you have to appeal to in order to be able to get like ad revenue and stuff. So yeah, it's a completely different landscape now, and I think what you just talked about honestly just best describes like how anybody trying to run a channel, it's either hit or miss for them if they're just trying to get their videos out there for people to watch.
It's a tough one. I think a lot about just in general how it's constructed and what it requires of people to try and reach other people. I mean, I think if you're just, even if you're following these like, you know, 10 ways to get your videos seen on YouTube, like you're still not going to hit any sort of algorithmic response that you think it's going to get. I see tons of people with like, you know, 10 followers and, you know, 10 views with videos that are like, you know, 10 crazy things you didn't know about Zelda. It's like, that's not all it is. You know, like those are the things that tricks you into thinking. So like, I don't necessarily think you have to, you know, have a clean, you know, video in order to reach people. I do think that it will limit you in some way, and that's the unfortunate part. I do think you can still reach plenty of people by like circumventing some of the usual tropes that make videos more seen. But I think at a certain point, yeah, they fucking strangle, you know, they strangle channels for different ways that are unnecessary and have nothing to do with like the quality of what they're putting out, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and it's also unfortunate that a lot of creators have to stick with other ways of being able to get something going. Like how you were talking about Patreon and doing stuff that's like off of the website or just off of YouTube. And that way you're still able to get monetary coming in at the same time while being able to produce a product for your viewers to continue watching. And I think back, oh, sorry, I was...
No, please go ahead, sorry.
The only other thing I was going to say is, like, I remember back then, people looked at PayPal, or not PayPal, just Patreon, as, like, a big negative. And I think that nowadays, people understand that, just like how it is with graffiti art, that YouTube is technically making art. Whether it's good art or bad art, they're still technically making art. And I think that it's like a lot of people are more accepted of being able to pay for said art to be able to keep that art continuously being pumped out. And it's honestly done a lot better for people. And I think that that's definitely something for people can add as, I guess you could say a positive, more or less of a negative, unless it's not really great content to support, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's like if YouTube initially was just like a straight up like hot dog stand or something, and then it transitioned to a into like a restaurant, an American restaurant, where now like you know, they don't pay anybody anything, And if you want the people who work there to actually make money, then you have to tip them. And in order to tip
Mm,
them, then you have to access their content through other means outside of YouTube, because the amount that's paid off of ads is nothing. There's a reason that these channels that have millions of subscribers are doing fucking ad reads. And it's
yeah.
because that's how they're actually making a living. And that's one of the unfortunate side effects. I would not be doing a Patreon if not for the fact that I'm trying to build it into something more sustainable for me, just from a monetary standpoint. I enjoy it, and the people who support it are amazing. But like, I wish I could just be making videos and that's all I focused on. It's just not. It's not productive, but that's the reality of it. If you, I mean, like in complete like transparency, if you make a video that gets 100,000 views, like I have one that has 100,000 views, I think I made $300 in ad revenue off of that.
Oh
So
wow.
like, that sounds awesome if you haven't made a ton of ad revenue, but
Hmm.
like, that video probably took me 30 hours to make. And then the next week I did one that probably took just as long and made $7 or $8. So it's like the even if every week I was doing one that had 100,000 views, it's still not a lot of money. It's still not. You're talking about $1,200 a month. Like that's not enough for someone to live off of. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
like, and of course that stacks. And like, I don't mean to sound insensitive to anyone who's like, "Oh, that sounds. What are you complaining about? You're actually getting some money." That's not the point. It's just that like, as far as it being a sustainable model for actually doing this for a living, you have to start pushing in other directions, or you
Hmm.
really have to have such a large audience that like you can just make it without it, which is that even that is maybe not enough. I don't know.
I think that's honestly the first time that we've had somebody on the show that has been openly talking about just like the monetary side of like how much they usually earn just from making videos. So that
I
yeah.
don't I don't really hear anyone talking about it, and I feel like I feel like it's, you don't want to like bring that up because you don't want people to feel like they're paying for you,
Mhm.
or that they owe you something, or like, um, you want them to believe that you're just doing this out of the goodness of your heart, which in truth I am. Like, I'm doing this because I love doing it. The like monetary side of it is just that like after several years, then you're like, well, is this possible? Could I like just do this as a job? Because, for the last 2 years, I've been doing, a job's amount of time for no job's pay. And that
Mhm.
isn't why you do it, but it's like, if you can make it happen, then you have to start, trying to get it so you
Mhm.
can make it happen. And why not be transparent about it? Why not be, upfront about the fact that like it doesn't matter how many people kind of watch this, that really isn't like enough to sustain on. There's like people I've seen people comment like, "Oh, you have a Patreon, fuck you," and it's like,
Mm.
I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, tell YouTube to fuck off. Like, they're the ones who are they're the ones who are paying you like, you know, 10,000th of a cent per view. Like, it's not
Mm.
like it seems like it's some great return, but it's not. Um, and I don't know. Like, I really, I'm open to talking about it, but I never want people to feel like that's like my only goal for doing this. It really isn't. If they stopped monetizing tomorrow, I wouldn't stop making videos at all. But I would have to rethink about how much time I put into it for sure.
Yeah, it's all for the sake of your art. I guess would be the only major positive to go off of that, because I know that is as stated before that it is essentially just like a separate form of art that you're basically expressing it just in more of like audio and visual like cues and stuff. So it's yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard to just like keep going if you're just like drained of like any sort of creativity, and eventually like people just learn to appreciate like the stuff they're producing for people much, I guess.
Yeah, when I did the art gallery, it was like you would kind of deal with a mix of different artists, and like some of them were definitely more money focused, where like they were making work that was like of a certain size or a certain style and a certain price point that they thought it would sell. It could still be very quality art, but like they were
Hmm.
mindful of it. And then you would have artists who were kind of in the middle, where they're making, more difficult or expensive art, and they are still kind of hoping it'll sell, but that's not particularly the focus. And then you had people who just were not focused on it at all, who like they would try and put their stuff up and say not for sale,
Mm.
all the time, because that wasn't the point for them. Their point was, that they wanted to make this work. The problem is that I ran a gallery where we had to sell art in order to pay the rent. So it's like that's not helpful in that context. You should be putting that in a museum or something.
Mm.
But they were in that with the people I worked with, none of them were like working artists. None of them did that full time. That was always something that they were doing as like a passion, and were maybe building up in the same way that I'm trying to now, to get to a point where they could do that full time. And at when you're at that level, that probably requires doing commissions, maybe some murals, maybe like designs for people's t-shirt company, or designing their logo, like doing stuff outside of your specific thing that you're focused on, because you're just trying to make it work. And so I think initially, like a lot of people back to YouTube would maybe see someone like the Angry Video Game Nerd talking about, I don't know, VPNs or something,
Oh yeah.
and be like, no, that's fucking sellout. And it's like, but especially as I've been doing stuff, and as I've been watching that dude forever, I don't have respect for it, but like I totally understand where he's coming from. Being his age, having kids, like, and knowing what he's done up until this point, it's like, why not? Like, you deserve way more than that. Like, and I hate that that's the avenue you have to go through in order to do it, but like, you should have 100 of these dudes paying you to advertise their shit because you're worth it. I don't know.
It's going to be really interesting to see what the next 10 years of content creators in like the video game space, and not just video games, but like just any type of medium that is on YouTube. And I know that styles change and different types of ideas grow, but one thing that is for certain is that the landscape of video content creators is going to change every generation, and it's going to be interesting to see whether it's going to be on YouTube or whether it's going to be on like a different platform of like
Sure.
what the most wildest stuff that is out there is going to be.
I mean, my wife watches TikTok, and I find the like medium of it way too fast,
Mm.
and it has its own kind of language and weirdness to it. But like, I get why people respond to it. I think a younger generation is going to be more acclimated to advertising being a part of everything, because the starting with Napster, essentially, like you just had 20 years of free content
Mhm.
where like they couldn't really figure out how to monetize it. They couldn't figure out how to like interrupt your shit with ads, and they finally figured out a way to do it. Now they're doing it with everything.
Oh
They're
yeah.
with streaming, or any single thing we could possibly interact with is you have to pay more if you don't want to hear the advertising. So I think they will be more into it. And I do think, I don't know, YouTube is weird because like personally I don't really watch videos over like 5 minutes. Like this video will be way longer than that, but like
Yeah.
not usually.
Hmm.
And so I see there's less short format stuff on YouTube now, because I mean they have like shorts and all that stuff,
Hmm.
but there's so much more long format stuff.
Oh
Two
yeah.
hour long videos about like, I don't know, one game is like, how the fuck can you talk about that for 2 hours? Like, even the most engrossing game I can think of, I couldn't talk about for more than 20 minutes, like 2 hours. But like, there's so much more of that where like people really go for it. So I think YouTube will always have a place for like a longer form of stuff, because I don't think just as attention spans shorten that'll just go away. But I really am not a big fan of shorts. I don't love the way that they're trying to focus on that, or like that's something that a lot of creators are pushing toward, because I find them really obnoxious, and I hate seeing the way it's laid out on a media on a site that I view mostly on my computer. Like
Mhm.
on a phone, I get it, but like Instagram is all on your phone. But like to watch shorts on your computer, it looks like shit.
Oh yeah.
It's terrible. It only works if you're on your phone. Why else would you watch it that way? But you can watch them all on your computer, and look at this like little fucking rectangle. It's awful. So I don't get that, and I get they're trying to cover all their bases, but yeah, I don't think they're going to win that war. I think that's going to go somewhere else, but we'll see.
Well, it does seem like things are technically changing for that now, because I think there's like I don't know, like they're not pushing it as much as they used to, but Who knows?
Yeah.
There may be some bit of change that'll happen within like the next few years, but
Yeah. Yeah.
despite all of that, we're getting close to the end of the recording, and the only other thing that we usually do for this is a segment that we call the 5 count. Now, for anybody that has never watched this bit before, it's basically us asking the person we're interviewing who of the 5 content creators they are watching right now. Doesn't matter if it is on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, whatever website that is out there that they recommend highly that everybody should check out.
I will try my best. Trying to think what I really watch a lot. So, Prim's Hood Cinema is the main the main thing that I really love, which is just this guy talking about mostly like 90s hood films like Boys in the Hood or Friday or something like that. And he is goddamn amazing. He's so fucking funny. Pushing Up Roses is definitely someone I recommend, who is kind of similar in terms of editing and commentary as this guy Prim. And her stuff is really funny. Like I said, it has moved more toward like analyzing Murder She Wrote episodes, but like that's a show I never watched, and I still watch all of her content. As far as like retro stuff, I really like Hungry Goriah, who does some NES stuff too, but it's mostly like RPG focused reviews on YouTube. She also does stuff
Hungry Goriah, you said?
I might be pronouncing Goriah wrong. I've never learned to say it, but Goriah is from Zelda. It's Goriya.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, she's great. What am I up to? 3?
Yes, you're up to 3.
Jeez, I don't know. I watch a lot of Street Fighter, so I ended up watching this guy Brian F, who's just a guy who plays Street Fighter. And like I couldn't tell you why I find it so fascinating, because it's not like I really enjoy watching people play the game that much, but I think he's one of the few people that can actually carry an ongoing dialogue while playing a game that I don't see anyone else really do. I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend that, but like, I find it, just as someone who watches a lot of people who are like trying to talk while playing, including myself, it's very difficult to actually come across as engaging while like focused on something very difficult. So yeah, props to him. Yeah, that's all I got. I can't really think of. I mean, there are definitely channels I like, but I'm at a loss to really think of them right now.
Oh, that's okay. This will pretty much just be a one-time special 4 count episode, so there we go.
Okay, 4 count. Hell yes.
Alright, so excellent. We were able to get it to the 1 hour mark. Well, actually, about a minute until it's like at the hour mark. But
we're gonna have to talk about something for a minute.
Oh, that's okay. BigOleWords, thank you very much for dropping in for the recording. And this was neat to be able to talk a bit about like the art stuff, and just especially like for your channel as well, and why a lot of NES stuff you like to cover over. And hopefully in the future we'll be able to get you back on the show again.
Yeah, man, I'd love to. That was really awesome.
Alright, and for anybody who is watching this right now or listening, you can check out this man over on youtube.com at /@BigOleWords, and you can follow him over on Instagram at BigOleWords as well. I think I've got that written down correctly, unless I may have gotten that wrong somehow.
Big old words, not big old worlds.
Yeah, and that's just leave the L off, and you pretty much got the channel already. So, with that being said, BigOleWords, thank you very much again for being on the show. It was a pleasure to have you on, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.